In science, a ruler, used to measure distance, is called a scale. We have essentially two rulers with which we can measure low and high in pitch space: the musical keyboard and the musical staff. Notice that the semitone is not immediately apparent when looking at the musical staff. You must remember, or better yet, imagine where the half step is located on the musical staff. This is one of the devilish little tricks of music reading that causes many wrong notes to be played, especially by younger or more inexperienced players. The 7 letter names are applied to both of these rulers. The letters A through G are our scale. Once we pick a starting note, we can number each note of the scale 1 through 7. The upside-down V above the number is called a caret and indicates that the number represents the note of a scale. We can then refer to the scale degrees, just like on a thermometer, by their number. This will be particularly helpful when we need to generalize about scales or when we need to compare scales to each other. Get used to using scale degree numbers. You are just numbering the notes of your scale. When we return to the first pitch class of the scale, 1 octave higher, we can sometimes refer to this as scale degree 8. By making each different note the first note of our scale, we can move the semitones to be in between the various scale degrees. In other words, the scale can exist in 7 different modes. These modes are named for the medieval church modes, which were derived, albeit inaccurately, from the ancient Greek modes. We will examine each of the 7 modes. Notice that as the starting note is shifted upward, the location of the semitones relative to the starting note move downward, because the semitones never move. As we explore each mode, also notice that each mode has its own characteristic sound. Now here's an odd thing. The scale that most people are familiar with does not start on the note A. It starts on the note C. We know this as the major scale. This scale is the most familiar of all of the modes, the Ionian mode. If we start our scale on the note C, the pattern of whole steps and half steps to the remaining notes of the scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Notice that the semitones are between scale degrees 3 and 4 and between scale degrees 7 and 8. This fact will become very important. Remember, it is the pattern of whole steps and half steps that make each mode sound different. And this pattern, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, the Ionian mode, always sounds like a major scale. Moving our starting note up 1 whole step to the note D creates a step pattern of whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. The semitones lie between scale degrees 2 and 3 and scale degrees 6 and 7. This is the Dorian mode. Starting and ending on the note E places the semitones between the 1st and 2nd and the 5th and 6th scale degrees. This is the Phrygian mode and is a minor scale often associated with Spanish music. If we begin and end our scale on the note F, the semitones are now in between the 4th and 5th scale degrees and the 7th and 8th scale degrees. This is the Lydian mode. If we play our scale from G to G, the half steps are now in between the 3rd and 4th scale degrees and the 6th and 7th scale degrees, creating the Mixolydian mode. If we use the mode starting on the note name A, the melodic step pattern is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. The semitones are in between the 2nd and 3rd scale degrees and the 5th and 6th scale degrees. We will revisit this mode as the natural minor scale when we learn about keys. Finally, if we play our scale starting and ending on the note B, the semitones lie between the 1st and 2nd scale degrees and the 4th and 5th scale degrees. This is the Locrian mode. Though the use of modes evolved long before people developed the concept of major and minor keys, you can probably tell that some of the modes sound brighter or happier, and others sound darker and more somber. This quality is labeled as major and minor, respectively. You might have noticed that the modes that sound major start with 2 whole steps. The modes that sound minor start with a combination of a whole step and a half step. Organizing music by mode has an extremely long history. It came about long before the concepts of harmony or chords. Though very old, modes are commonly used in contemporary music, such as rock and jazz. At this point, you should understand the concept of modes. Each mode sounds different because the pattern of half steps and whole steps changes in relationship to the first note of the scale, or what we call the tonal center. It is this relationship that creates the sense of mode.